Welcome back to the Alpacamade channel. I'm curious to know what you did during your holidays, and here's what I did. I played around with some paper because I, one, was in a holding pattern, and two, was interested in some other paper techniques. You're going to have to put up with my flailing hands a little bit as I do this voiceover. The first thing I did was play around with waxing paper. I used some beeswax. Don't use paraffin wax for this. This is Amazon packing paper, the lightweight stuff. I cut it to 8.5 by something, it's 8 by something, I don't remember now. So double that and then folded it so it was 8. And applied beeswax. I love the result. It is more like faux leather than the previous experiment we did with faux leather, where you remember we did a paste up on a file folder. Don't use paraffin. Don't use paraffin. Now I've said it 3 times, you'll remember. Use beeswax. And I like this little small jar. It doesn't come like this. It comes in a plastic package, but I just stuck the label on that jar. It's very easy to melt with an iron, and I think you'll like the results. I also applied it to some heavier packing paper, which I stuck together with a glue stick. If I didn't mention that before, this is a folded in half, just like the previous one, stuck together with glue stick. I really encourage you to use the glue stick because it needs to be stuck together. The wax is not sufficient. I hit it with vintage photo distress ink, just hitting the highlights, and then waxed it, and I love the finish on it. The next technique is a combination. I had some cheap lined paper that pulls off from the top, and I made some DIY alcohol ink. I wasn't happy with this piece. It was actually a full piece, so I have 2 pieces. I hit it with wax, and then I took a card and I used the top of the card, or the side of the card, to really just burnish that surface, and it gave it a high sheen and looks really nice. I also applied it to a couple of book pages. And if you're going to use a stencil like I did here, you'd want to use an alcohol-based ink or a Sharpie marker, something that is permanent. Next, I went into my stash of stuff and I pulled out the very first jelly prints I had ever done, and I photocopied a couple of them that I liked and waxed them, and I'll show you the wax results. Because I use the medium quality or the good quality reproduction on my photocopier, the waxed result gives a beautiful vellum-like surface. It's very translucent, and the photocopier setting, because it's not set on high quality, sort of mutes and diffuses the print. It's not a one-for-one exact high detail print. And I'm just showing you here, this is a 12 by 12 piece of tile that I used as my surface to iron. Don't iron on your beautiful, expensive craft mat. You will warp it. All of these techniques are really, some of them as old as time. Waxing goes back centuries, where people tried to preserve whatever they had created. And here I'm showing you a second waxed piece from that same original jelly print. And I tried to build the edges a little bit. At first, I just wanted a shadow line, not unlike what you normally do with vintage photo distress ink, but it just didn't show up. There wasn't enough contrast. So then I tried from Ranger also distress paint, and it was too yellowy. I didn't like it. So in the end, I took some metallic paint on my finger, and I just went around it. Now it's messy and doesn't look like, a nice clean edge, but I don't care. I like this old vintagey surface. And I also wanted to point out that anywhere, as I suspected, where there was a lot of paint, like in the corners, the wax didn't penetrate fully. So I had to flip it over and re-wax some of the back. And as we always do with these projects, we have to have some kind of sepia tone, something in our stash. And so I took vintage photo again and inked my edges, and then I waxed this piece, and this truly looks like parchment. and I'm very happy with the results. A few words about preserving and storing these papers for future use. They have wax on them. You know that wax melts in heat. I don't remember off the top of my head what the melt point of wax is, but I'll look it up and I'll put it in the corner somewhere of the video. So what I suggest you do is slip a piece of plain copy paper or tissue paper in between these when you store them flat in your storage boxes or bins or folders. Don't just let them sit on top of each other, because you will end up with stuck pages if for whatever reason one of your kids or your spouse turns the heat up really high. One of the alternatives you can use is mineral oil or baby oil. Baby oil is essentially mineral oil, but we put it on babies, it should be okay. The one thing you want to do is let it dry really well, and the marks that you see coming through that I just pointed to are Ross's blue glue. I would not use a blue glue stick. I would not use one of the purple ones either. Use one that you know, because you can see it dries clear. Doesn't matter for this demonstration. It's a lot more flexible, and I let it hang for about 2 days, and then I also blotted it in that sort of cushy type paper towel that you can buy at the black and yellow dollar store. Now, what else can you do with it? Well, you can use it as a separating sheet, and you can, this is wax, not oiled, but it makes a beautiful over sheet and protects your graphite or your chalk from being smeared. You could also just wax a graphite drawing or a chalk drawing. It will mute and subtly soften your lines. So be aware of that. That's a design choice. The waxed sheets, well, you're going to say to me, why would I wax tissue paper? Because you end up with waxed paper. Not quite. Waxed paper base is a little heavier than tissue paper, and tissue paper gives you a beautiful translucent effect. Still not sold? I have the most obvious choice, and that is to make folio covers or junk journal covers or the like with it. You can fold it. It's very flexible. You can see right there where I actually had folded it before, and it will give you a crinkle effect, and if you scrunch the whole thing up, you're going to get a whole nother effect with the wax sort of breaking a little bit and giving you a light spider webby design. And here you can see it lends itself beautifully to cover application. This one just happens to be the same size as this folio I made for my ephemera. There is one big downside that I want to make you aware of so that you don't come back and leave unhappiness in the comments, and that is whatever you use this wax on, if you have things that you want to put together, layers and so forth, do all your layers first, like you see in my ephemera cover, the one I'm actually using, before you apply wax, because there is no glue that we're aware of that will adhere wax to wax or wax to non-wax. I consulted with somebody who does this as, you know, part of her art profession, and she said, no, unfortunately, we've not found any, and that would include Beacon 3-in-1 as far as I know. I know a lot of junk journalers and art journalers use wax on their pages to separate the pages and seal them so they don't stick together like they do with a glue type substance or a water-based sealer. So that's my last tip for you. Do all your gluing first and then use your wax as a coating. That's all I have for you today. I hope that you have had a sunny couple of weeks, and if you want to see demonstrations of this, by all means let me know in the comments. And until I see you again, have a great week.